It's time to huddle up, football fans, and welcome into the Hard Count Podcast, Episode 3. I'm your host, Anthony Galler, and thank you for joining me today. And today I have not one, but two very special guests with me. I got my boys Max Marino and Quinn Frankel in the house. So before we get things started today, fellas, how we doing?
Doing all right, man.
Surviving, man. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, same to you. Getting through
Great
it.
to see the boys.
Yeah, of course. And we had a pretty busy week in the NFL this week. A lot of interesting things going on, so we're going to start it up. We got 4 topics, 4 downs for you today. So we're going to start with this, first down on the show today. So LA County in California has announced the extension of their stay-at-home policy through the month of July. Now, this, of course, is already putting some college football seasons for teams like USC and UCLA in some sort of jeopardy as we approach the college football season. But the NFL, for the time being, remains committed to playing the entire 16-game schedule as it is. So the NFL has stated a number of different contingency plans for the time being, and one of them being the potential that California teams such as the LA Chargers, the LA Rams, and the San Francisco 49ers could be moved out of California to play their home games somewhere else if need be, if it comes to that, although nothing, of course, is close to being finalized yet. So hearing this plan, and I'll start with you, Quinn, hearing this plan, first of all, what is your reaction to this news? And do you think this could be a feasible plan for the NFL if it's forced to put it into place?
You know, it really, it really sucks for the Rams. They have this beautiful new stadium that's coming in, and they may not have a chance to play in it this year. I'm pretty sure they were going to play. It would have been this year for it. Mm-hmm. I think the NFL really wants to have this season more than anything. They clearly want to have a full 16-game season. There's a ton of revenue. There's a ton of that. So I think moving forward, if they're able to, then they'll have to move them somewhere, whether it's a college stadium. You know, that's the thing about football is that there's places all over, especially with no fans, that there's 100 yards for 2 teams to play in. So obviously it's not ideal for these California teams, and especially if there is a possibility of fans. You never know with this virus, if everything clears up in time by September, maybe we could see fans later on the season. It'd be a real bummer for, Rams, Chargers, and 49ers fans. But I think for right now, there's definitely a ton of places where they could play, and I think the NFL really wants to have this season. So regardless, they may have to move them.
All right, Max, how about you?
Like, I was thinking about it. Like, the NFL is definitely going to do whatever they can to make the season happen. And they're going to try to do everything they can to make the season happen with fans. I think if any sport was to be the stingiest kind of about it, it would probably be the NFL. That's where they make a majority of their revenue. Obviously, they sell the most tickets out of any sport, but look, we're obviously in unprecedented times. Nobody knows what exactly to do. No plan should be considered out of, the realm of possibilities, because it's just, you have to do something kind of crazy. It does, like Quinn was saying, it does, it kind of sucks for teams like the Chargers, the Rams especially, that they're going to be the first year in their new stadium, but it's just what you got to do if you want to play this season, right? You're going to have to do something like this. And I have a feeling they're not going to be the only state. I truly don't think New York's going to allow people to play in their stadiums in front of their fans either. So teams like the Giants, Bills, and Jets, they're going to have to go somewhere else too. So you got to make it work. You got to be willing to make sacrifices. Otherwise, it's just not going to get done.
Right. I think the real issue, too, is going to be players and their families. Because obviously, especially in these unprecedented times, as you called them, and as they are, if Jared Goff wants to spend time with his family and he can't because he's playing in Texas, that's a real bummer. And that's, the same with all these sports. If they do move to these remote areas and just have the players quarantine just by themselves, obviously it's such a tough situation. So they really have to work out these kinks.
Yeah, no, I think both of you guys touched upon it. And, we do have a couple of states now, Arizona and Florida being 2 of them, who have now declared open for business in terms of sporting events. So I think there are going to be more options going forward. And, as we go along here into May and June and July, more states, I believe, will open up to the possibility of having sports in their state. But I think, Max, you said it too. California might not be the only state here. New
Yeah.
York, I think especially, Buffalo being more upstate, maybe they could allow it. But I think the Jets and the Giants, that's a potential situation where they might have to move as well. So I think you're absolutely right about that. But I do agree. If you want sports to go on in this time of the world, you're going to have to do some things that are out of the ordinary, and they might not be the most comfortable thing, but it's what you got to do in order to make it happen.
Yeah.
And also, Quinn, same with your point too. I think you made a valid point as well in terms of the players, and it really depends on, will they go for it? Are they going to go for the possibility of not having access to their family and being around their family for months at a time? Jared Goff going out to Texas, does he want to do that, for example?
Right.
So that's another good argument as well. So any final thoughts on this topic, or do we want to move on?
I just, real quick, I just want to say, I don't really get the whole, I understand that, if the players are going to be quarantined, right, they don't want any outside kind of access. But, in order to get their families to be with them, I feel like as long as, their families, their immediate family, right, not letting any extended family, like cousins, whatever, uncles, but, if their immediate family were just staying in hotels, you know what I mean, or something like that, why can't that happen? If they obviously could not leave, and it'd be tough to maybe monitor that, but I think that's a sacrifice that people are going to be more willing to make as opposed to leaving their families for 4, 5, 6, whatever months.
Right. Like you said, it's a really tough sacrifice to give up. The problem is, if you got kids, if they go out, see a friend right there, or just really anything. And in the end, I pray every morning when I wake up that there's an NFL season. And I really think that come September, we'll be seeing a kickoff of some sort.
Man, I'm hoping.
Really hope for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, good thoughts, fellas. We'll move on down to second down now. So we're going to go to the state of Florida, in fact. So after drafting him with the 5th pick in this year's NFL draft, Tua Tagovailoa is officially a Miami Dolphin. Earlier this week, he agreed to terms with the team on a 4-year deal worth north of $30 million, all guaranteed money, by the way. And he also has a team option for the 5th year. And also on a side note, Tua actually has on NFLshop.com the highest selling jersey right now. He's ahead of Tom Brady's Buccaneers jersey, which is pretty remarkable, actually. So a couple of questions for you guys to both touch on. Max, I'll start with you this time. But A, what do you expect to see from Tua this year in Miami? And in terms of the quarterbacks from this year's draft class, Burrow, Herbert, Tua, all of them, do you think Tua is going to be the best pro out of all these guys, or do you have your eyes on somebody else?
Well, it's interesting. For Tua's sake, Ryan Fitzpatrick is still in Miami, correct?
Yeah.
So I don't think he might not start the first couple weeks. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is one of those solid veterans, good guys, knows the game. He might not be physically gifted, but knows the game well. And Tua can learn a lot from Ryan Fitzpatrick, as kind of crazy as that sounds. So I don't know how his rookie season's going to go. Who knows how much he's going to play? I think he'll eventually get the starting job just because he's the 5th pick. But Tua is the kind of guy where he's just more of a safe bet. He was very consistent in college. He has good footwork. Didn't really make a lot of mistakes. Granted, he had one of the best coaches ever, Nick Saban. He had guys like Jerry Jeudy on his offense, an NFL caliber receiver, a good receiver. He's got a guy like Devontae Parker, so he does have a good weapon to throw to. He's not throwing to nobody. But to answer your second question, Anthony, I think that Joe Burrow is going to have a better rookie season. Just because, and I hate this argument, like a Coward. We talk a lot about Colin Coward for sure, but he always makes this argument that the Bengals are like this really bad team, and I get that. They won 2 games last year, so whatever. But on offense, they're pretty they're not terrible. They have Joe Mixon's a good running back. Eifert's a good tight end. Who knows about A.J. Green, but if he's semi-healthy, he's a pretty good receiver. Boyd, another good receiver. He's got some weapons, and he's older than Tua, spent more time in college, more of a pocket passer per se. So I think he would have the better rookie year. And, depending on how long his career could be, I think he could have the better career as well.
So to go off your point, I'm big on the Tua train, but I also agree with you that Joe Burrow is going to have a great year. I think offensively, like you said, they're set up really well. One name that you didn't mention, but I think is still a great asset for Burrow to have is T. Higgins from Clemson. He's another young receiver. So with that group, that's a solid core, and I think that's a better core than Tua has. Although I do really enjoy the core that he has with Gesicki, who's a pretty decent tight end, who a lot of people have been saying is going to have a breakout year.
Yep.
He has two decent receivers in Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, who tore his ACL last year, but before that was putting up some great numbers. So I think in the end, Tua is going to be a great pick in Miami. It's just really can a left-handed quarterback lead that team to a title. If the draft was a year, Tua going into last year, Tua was the number one pick consensus. And I think if he stayed healthy, and obviously if Burrow didn't have the year that he had, Tua would clearly be the number one pick and playing in Cincinnati. So it's going to be interesting to see throughout these two careers how they both develop. But I do really like Tua. I also like Justin Herbert. I think he's in a very good situation. I think that Chargers team has a lot of talent to make him look good. So it'd be interesting to see these three quarterbacks.
Yeah, and you said it, Quinn. I think it absolutely comes down to health with Tua. That's first and foremost. This kid's got all the talent in the world. Saw him play at Alabama for a couple of years, and some of the throws he made. He's a number one draft pick talent-wise. There's no doubt about that in my mind. It's just a matter of, how does he come back from the hip injury? He's been banged up in addition to the hip injury a couple of times throughout his career. So how does he rebound off of that? But
that's a good point. Yeah.
Quickly, in addition, do you think, looking at this Miami team, now obviously we know Tom Brady is no longer a Patriot. So let me just get your quick thoughts on this. Do you think, potentially with Tua at the helm this season, could he guide this Dolphins team to a playoff spot, or is that a little too premature?
So I think for this year, it's a little too off. I think they are going to compete for the wild card. I really like this Bills team this year. I think that offense is going to improve drastically with Stephon Diggs as their new number one. They also got Zach Moss in the draft, so they're going to have, kind of more running backs to give the share around for Josh Allen. And I think Josh Allen can be a decent quarterback at points. He's especially mobile, which is good. I think the AFC wild card is going to be so tough this year. You got so many teams that could easily compete, especially from the AFC North. Steelers, maybe the Browns, probably not the Bengals, but just there's a bunch of teams up in the air. And although I think the AFC East, you can never count out Mr. Bill Belichick and the Patriots, that team. So I think this year especially, it's probably too far off. But especially in the coming years, when the NFL has that extra wild card spot, then I think it's that could easily be Tua's spot.
When you really hit it on the head there, just talking about how the AFC is pretty stacked in terms of the wild card. I definitely think the Bills this is their year to win the division. Everybody in the AFC East is jumping for joy that Tom Brady isn't there anymore. They're thinking this is our year. It has to be our year. But another team in the AFC East that also improved is the Jets. The Jets got a good amount better. They got some offensive line help to protect Sam Darnold. That was obviously a big issue. If they can, keep him healthy for one, because he missed a good amount of games for mono last year. I mean, that's such a Jets kind of thing to happen. Your quarterback gets mono, not even hurt. But other than that, you got obviously the Chiefs, the Ravens. Those are the two that are probably going to walk away. In the South might be up in the air. Maybe the Titans, again, to win that division. Who knows? Because the Texans losing Hopkins, I don't know if their offense is going to be as explosive, but we'll see. I definitely think two teams are going to make it out of the North, whether it's the Browns or the Steelers. And in the AFC, it's going to be real competitive. You can never count out Bill Belichick, like you said. So it might be a little too premature for the Dolphins, especially if Tua doesn't start right away.
Just to go off your point real quick, one team that even could compete as well is the Colts. Obviously, Philip Rivers is old, but I still think he can manage a game very well, and especially with that offense with Ty. They got Jonathan Taylor, who I think is going to be a great back in the NFL, and also Michael Pittman from USC. So I think, there's so much talent in the AFC. Obviously, like I said, I think the Dolphins have some talent, and the AFC East is going to be up for grabs. So, just going to be really competitive football in the AFC this year.
Definitely.
All right, well, we'll move on to third down, fellas. So we know that we can't bet on much these days. We got UFC back, NASCAR coming back. Still can't bet on too much, but you can make some bets on NFL awards for this upcoming season. One of my favorite awards to always bet on is the Comeback Player of the Year award, and we actually have a lot of intriguing options for this season. So according to Bet Online, the leaders in the clubhouse for the Comeback Player of the Year award early are Big Ben leading the way at plus 250, Gronk is at plus 450, J.J. Watt plus 500, A.J. Green and Nick Foles plus 600, Cam Newton still unsigned, but he's plus 800, Matt Stafford also at plus 800, and then we've got Myles Garrett at plus 1,200 and Antonio Brown at plus 2,000. So looking at this immediate list of just these top 9 or 10 guys or so, who in your eyes, I'll start with you this time, Quinn, who in your eyes from just that list alone stands out as being a really good bet?
So I said this, we were talking a little earlier. I like the Big Ben bet. I think the talent around him and just what he's able to do. If he's able to stay healthy, he's a great quarterback, and he's been that. But probably the best bet on that list, J.J. Watt at plus 500, that man is just an animal. And I love J.J. Watt. I hope he can stay healthy. But, when he's healthy, he could easily be Defensive Player of the Year. But my best bet's going to be A.J. Green. We talked about the Bengals a little bit, and A.J. Green was a top 5 wide receiver 3 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago. And if he could be Joe Burrow's number one target, if he could help progress Joe Burrow, then that man is going to have a crazy year, especially with Joe Burrow's arm. So I think I really like the A.J. Green bet.
You make a good point with A.J. Green, definitely, for sure. And it might be the easiest for a wide receiver maybe to come back from an injury as opposed to a quarterback or a defensive end, whatever. I personally think that you mentioned Big Ben. That would be my pick off the bat. Easy pick there for myself. I think that Mike Tomlin's going to realize that, Ben might not have, a couple years left. He might only have one more really good year left. So let's try to get everything out of him that we can. They picked up Ebron. A lot of people, have realized that they also picked up a second-round receiver, Chase Claypool, out of Notre Dame, I believe. So that's another receiver. The Steelers don't forget now, the Steelers know how to draft receivers. Juju Smith was a second-round pick. Antonio Brown was a seventh-round pick. They've got Hines Ward a few years back. They know that position very well. They scout that position very well. Mentioned the Ebron. I just think that Big Ben, he has some weapons, and if he can stay healthy, he should be a surefire bet. Another sleeper in that category, Myles Garrett, because he wasn't hurt. He was just suspended. So he's not, coming off an injury. If anything, he's coming for vengeance. And I think that incident, that everybody's going to focus on that for the rest of his career pretty much. Everybody's going to tie him with that. So he's going to try to do everything that he can, in my opinion, to change that. And as long as he doesn't get suspended and doesn't do an idiotic move, he should be up there for Comeback Player of the Year for sure.
I think one thing that you mentioned as well is with Juju. Juju is so young, and although he had a bad year last year with Mason Rudolph, that man can play. And
yeah.
as a we'll really get to see this year is if he's a true number one receiver with Big Ben now.
Yeah.
And they're going to do with him moving forward, because he clearly wasn't working with Mason Rudolph that well. So Big Ben turned Juju into that real number one.
And I don't know if it was really Mason Rudolph that didn't help, or that, it was, or if it was Juju that really didn't do well, it was probably Mason Rudolph. And they had another quarterback, Duck Hodges. Like, his name was
Right.
Duck. Like, you give him Big Ben back, he might be a number one receiver for sure.
And so in terms of guys who are not on this immediate list, maybe some more of a sleeper pick, I guess you would say. Anybody that stands out to either of you guys in terms of sleepers maybe for this award?
So I really think so. I looked at a list, and Derwin James is plus 2,500. I think that's incredible value for him. He was highly scouted and was a beast at Florida State. And when he was healthy 2 years ago, he was a solid player on defense. I think him returning with that great Chargers D. I'm really big on the Chargers defense this year, especially when they picked up, I think it's Kenneth Murray that they drafted. Yeah. I just think that defense all around is great. So I think if Derwin James really has a breakout year at plus 2,500, that's great odds for him.
Definitely could see that. Yeah. I mean, other than the list, I really can't really think of many other guys who are sleepers out there.
Yeah. I think a guy who stood out to me when I look at the list, how about Le'Veon Bell?
Yeah.
I think, the Jets, like you said, Max, a little while ago, Jets should be on paper a more improved team this year. And I think you made a great point earlier about their offensive line was a huge liability going back to last year. They've revamped that offensive line a little bit. I'm not saying it's great now, but it is improved. And, I think Le'Veon Bell, this is a guy, you can't forget how talented he was during his Pittsburgh tenure. I mean, this guy, for at least a handful of seasons, he was really the best running back in football. I'm not saying that's what he is now currently, but it didn't surprise me to see, going back to last year, it didn't surprise me to see him show some rust throughout the year. And he really just did not play. He didn't play Le'Veon Bell football. I think a combination was A, the Jets offensive line, and B, just a rust after taking a year off. But I think this year with a more improved offensive line, and you got to think about this too, the Jets are not particularly strong at wide receiver. They did draft a receiver, but they're still not very strong at the position. So I think that Le'Veon Bell should have a lot of opportunities in that Jets offense. But yeah, so I guess we will transition now into our fourth and final down. So we'll talk about something that is off the field, actually, but something that's still very interesting. So ESPN, our favorite, ESPN will be making changes inside their broadcast booth for this upcoming season for Monday Night Football. So Joe Tessitore and Booger McFarland, they are out after being heavily criticized by the public last season. ESPN has already made a pursuit of some big names, such as guys like Tony Romo, Peyton Manning, and Al Michaels, but ultimately to no avail. So according to reports, they are looking to potentially fill the position from within. So some names being floated around at this point include Dan Orlovsky, Steve Levy, Louis Riddick, or potentially a guy like Reese Davis or Chris Fowler from the college football ranks. So I got a couple of different questions for this topic, but I'll start with the first one. So how do we feel, and I'll start with you, Quinn, how do we feel about Booger and Joe Tessitore being out as a Monday Night Football commentators, and do we agree with the decision?
I do agree with the decision. I think Booger was very tough to listen to at points, and it was pointed out, multiple times on social media. I think he's, probably very good for in studio, but during the game, especially, you guys remember that Booger mobile that would just like be on the sidelines, just take up. So it was just a bad look for ESPN all around. So I think it's good to clean house there. I personally didn't mind Joe Tessitore. I thought he was a pretty good play-by-play and wasn't the worst voice around. But, I do think it's the correct decision to make.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really arguable. They were definitely trying to do too much. I mean, I know the first year they had Witten with them, and he was god-awful. For some reason, that dude could not, really commentate, maybe because he's just a shy guy, maybe because he wanted to get back in the game, whatever. But Booger, to me, he just tried to do too much at times, and really same with Tessitore. I didn't like how every single play seemed like the game-winning touchdown. Like, I know you're supposed to be excited, and Joe Buck gets a lot of criticism for sounding so boring, but he was just, this guy, it was like the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl every single play. He would be screaming like that Monday night game with Mahomes and Goff last year, or 2 years ago, I think it was now. Yeah, 2 years ago, where they're just going back and forth. I was watching those highlights the other day, and every single touchdown, I'm like, oh my God, dude, like, we get it, you know what I mean? It was a touchdown. Like, we've seen a lot of them this game. So I definitely think that they should, they're smart to move on from them. And one guy in particular that I really would want to see in the play-by-play is Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee, a lot, like, he's known for jokes. He's hilarious. And ESPN might not want a guy who's known for jokes as opposed for knowing football, but he does know football. And I think he's such a talented guy where in a serious setting, he could be just as good as a joking around setting. His podcast can be really serious at times. He's just got a knack for the game, a knack for storytelling, which is also important when you're commentating games. I think he would be an absolute perfect guy for ESPN.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Max. And, I think it's really important for ESPN to look at this and say to themselves, you need somebody who's for the fans. This is about, part of the broadcasting experience when you're watching Monday Night Football. Yeah, the game is very important, and that's, obviously the primary reason why we're all watching. But the other part of the equation is just the fan experience to it. Is it a fun commentary to listen to?
Absolutely.
So I love Pat McAfee. It sounds as if he's not going to be the guy, but I do agree. I think he would be great for it. And you're right. This guy, I don't know why there's this kind of just opinion that he doesn't really know the game. I don't know what it is, but he does know the game. He played for several years, so he knows the game. He knows what he's talking about. He's got a goofy personality, but, that might be good for the broadcast booth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would agree with that. Now, just looking at the list of candidates provided, just if we take Pat McAfee off the board for a second, we look at the guys who are rumored to be in the mix. And again, I'll go over them briefly. Dan Orlovsky, Steve Levy, Louis Riddick, or maybe a guy like Reese Davis, Chris Fowler from college football. Is there anybody or any two guys maybe that stand out to you and guys that you really like and you'd like to see in the broadcast booth?
So I really like listening to Reese Davis and Chris Fowler whenever they do college games. I think those names have been thrown around if there is no college season to, still use those guys and use that talent. Although, I would really love to see Peyton Manning do Monday night. I think that would be a great fit for them. I think he is so knowledgeable of the game as well. And I know he's been doing a lot of stuff for ESPN with ESPN Plus with like Peyton Places and stuff. It's on like every single day. So, so obviously, I think he either turned down the job or, wasn't into it. But I think Peyton would be an excellent fit. And, outside of that, I really like Orlovsky and Steve Levy as well.
I totally agree with you with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning would be the most ideal candidate by far. The amount of football that guy knows to match with his personality, he would be like you couldn't build a better commentator in my opinion, because one, he was a Hall of Famer too, so you can't even say, oh, this guy wasn't good, whatever, because that's what people say about a good amount of commentators, like, oh, he wasn't that good, like a guy like Booger, he wasn't a great NFL player, so why is this guy commentating, stuff like that. Peyton Manning would be ideal, and he has said no. But I do think that Peyton Manning would say yes if you matched him with a really good play-by-play guy. Chris Fowler for sure. Chris Fowler's a legend. Any game with Chris Fowler in it, he's gonna it's gonna be a good game. You just have that feeling. He does Wimbledon, for Christ's sake. Like he does some really important sporting events. So you match Peyton Manning with a guy like that, I think ESPN would go back to being, and Monday Night Football would go back to being the prime time, because, we forget that Monday Night Football was the big deal before Sunday Night Football, and even when it wasn't, even, 10 years ago when they had Mike Tirico and Gruden, that was such a good, what a combo to listen to. Mike Tirico's the man. Shout out Syracuse, New York for you, Anthony. He's from Syracuse, but he was so good, and Gruden was just absolutely a pleasure to listen to. You talk about knowing the game and then to match that, the personality. ESPN, man, and I talked about this in my report, they need to fix that. They need to make sure they hit it on the head with this one. I wouldn't mind seeing Louis Riddick out of those guys, though, that you mentioned, Anthony.
I think with Tirico, I think Tirico's really going to be taking over the head job at NBC with Sunday Night Football, and I think it'll end up being Tirico and Breeze for a while, which I think is just going to be fantastic.
That would be amazing.
I think Drew Brees is also one of those guys like Peyton. He's been around the game. He's such a likable guy as well. So just those two are going to be great for Sunday Night Football.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much agree. That would be dynamic if you had Tirico and Breeze. Ooh, that would be good. So we got a few extra minutes here. So I'll just quickly get your opinion on this. Wasn't on the outline, but we got a few minutes. So yes, bonus question time. Fifth down, the down that doesn't exist, but we'll go with it. So the Rams, well, actually going back to last month, they released their new logo, met with heavy criticism, as we know. But then yesterday, or maybe it was 2 days ago, they came out with the new uniforms for this upcoming season. So I assume that you guys have both had a chance to get a little bit of a glimpse at them. Any thoughts on the uniforms in comparison to the logo? What are we feeling like?
I mean, that team is kind of turning into a mess. To be completely honest with you both, I don't hate the blue ones. I do not hate the blue with the yellow gradient on the number.
Yeah.
I don't hate that. The white ones are just not going to look good at all, especially with this same helmet too. I think the gradient logos, which we've been seeing a lot of recently in the NFL with the Falcons have done it, now the Rams. We'll see how they look, but not the biggest fan.
No, I mean, look, everybody knows that the best Rams jerseys of all time are definitely the blue with the yellow. You know what I mean? So those ones, like you said, Quinn, those are good. The white got to go. The same helmet deal, that's got to go. I mean, 2020, man, everybody's just trying to be so, creative. I don't know what it is. These new jerseys that are coming out, I really don't like any of them for that, except for the Chargers. Chargers are sweet. I could get on board with those. Powder blue jerseys are the best jerseys in football history, no doubt. But now the Rams, I mean, you're going to have a new stadium and you're going to walk out like, a arena football team. Like, come on, you can't be doing that.
Yeah. I think it was a step up from the logo. The logo was terrible. I mean, at least in my opinion. I don't know how you guys felt about that, but the logo was really bad. I mean,
horrible.
I just don't understand. Why can't the logo just be a ram? I mean, you guys are the Rams. I don't understand what the logo is supposed to be. I just want somebody to say, what it is. You know what I mean? I just want to know, what exactly it's supposed to be.
Yeah, makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't get that. But, I agree. 2020, I totally agree with what you said, Max. I think everybody just now is trying to be super, creative and, cutesy with, the uniforms and the logos. And, I just appreciate some more classical looks, man. I like some of the old logos, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got a new uniform set this off season. I wish they would just go back to the days when they wore the creamsicles and they had the Buccaneer logo that was really, it actually looked like a real pirate, It was the orange one.
And maybe that's just because, we didn't really get to see, we're only 22, so we didn't get to see, that every Sunday like a lot of other people did. But I always say, dude, especially maybe in the NBA, not just the NFL, but, throwback jerseys are just so much cooler than, these jerseys nowadays. I don't know what, like I said, maybe it's because we didn't really see them in that jersey all the time. But, how are the Utah Jazz not wearing those purple jerseys that they used to have? I mean, come on, what are you doing?
Same with the Grizzlies too, with the old Vancouver jerseys. Those obviously are gonna sell way more too. I would love a Ja Morant, that throwback jersey.
Facts.
Give me Donovan Mitchell. They did wear both those.
They have them as alternates, but just wear them all the time, bro. What are we doing? And if we're talking football, Chargers should be wearing those powder blues pretty much every Sunday. Let's be real.
Homer away wearing it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what other team has sick throwback jerseys in the NFL, like the Jaguars. Like those jerseys back, like the teal. Oh man, those were sweet. Like you got to go back to that. Like, let's get with the program, people.
It's funny how rare you see throwback jerseys in the NFL compared to the NBA now. And maybe that's a trend that we'll see going forward because the NBA is really used to it. But you rarely see they'll wear them for one game. I mean, the Packers throwbacks are hideous.
Oh yeah, those are disgusting.
There's definitely some bad ones and some good. There's good and the bad.
Exactly.
Yeah, the good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today on the Hard Count Podcast. So again, just want to say thank you to both of you for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed the show today. So yeah, that's going to do it for Hard Count Podcast episode 3. So thank you guys. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy. Stay strong. And I will see you next time from the Gridiron on the Hard Count Podcast. Take it easy.
See you later, Anthony. Thanks for having us.